Did you see yourself as a Rosie the Riveter during the war?
No, I didn't. I don't even see myself as that now. The country that we were then is not the country that we have, the nation that we have now. For instance, I grew up as a child with the service workers generation. Our fathers and our uncles were the red caps and the Pullman porters and the bellhops and the janitors and the laborers, and our mothers were 50 cents an hour domestic servants. But I share that history in order to indicate that being a clerk, even in a segregated union hall in 1942, was a step up. My folks were really proud of me because I wasn't making beds in a hotel. I was a clerk, which in 1942 would have been the equivalent of today's young woman of color being the first in her family to enter college, because that's how different we were in those years. And I hope you can understand that. But that's how much social progress the country has made over those 70 years. You're not living in that world, but that's the world I grew up in. At the time that Rosie the Riveter was a campaign to entice women out of their homes into non-traditional labor for the first time, to take the place of the men who were off fighting, that was simply not my story at all.
Betty, before you had mentioned that you had worked as a clerk. Could you please specify your jobs as a clerk?
Yeah, I was working for Boilermakers Auxiliary 36. The unions were not yet racially integrated. They wouldn't be for another decade. And so that the unions created auxiliaries, and that's a fancy word for Jim Crow, into which all the black workers were dumped. I came in every day in a carpool. I changed addresses on 3x5 file cards of people who were constantly in motion because everyone was trying to get settled into housing. And I was doing this to save the world for democracy. And as you can see, it worked. It's also true that I had no idea what was happening around me. I never saw a ship under construction. I never saw a ship being launched. I was in a temporary building that was torn down immediately when the war ended. At 20, I was what, maybe 4 years older than you are, 5 years? I was not much more than a child, certainly slightly out of adolescence. The larger political issues were not a part of my life at the time. I only could see what was around me, and that was that little union hall.